Welcome to the RPGamer review of Elohim Eternal 2 Son of Man. This is read by Sparrow Press, written by Dalandar, and the video is edited by Frog. There are multiple ways for indie RPGs to stand out, and one of these is to push its storytelling to the forefront. Big ideas can work well for individual titles, but presenting the middle act of a multi-part story while maintaining a strong level of urgency is always challenging. This is the issue plaguing George Alexandros' Elohim's Eternal 2 Son of Man. Its new setting doesn't tie in easily with the original title, and the game spends its time setting things up for a future that doesn't arrive yet. The experience feels like a side quest, which add pressure to a passable combat system and mundane visual and audio presentation that can pick up the slack. Set on the world of Kinoma, Elohim Eternal 2 Son of Man explores a cyberpunk dystopian story that is heavily inspired by the events of the New Testament of the Christian Bible. This is a departure from the events of predecessor Elohim Eternal, the Babel Code, which took place on Kenoma's twin world Aiden, and follow an ancient Egyptian theme. What ties the two together is the fear of an all-powerful race called the Demiurge. On Kinoma, they are a boogeyman that no one has seen but everyone has been afraid of for many years. While of Aiden, they were known as cosmocrators and used centuries of manipulation and war to gather resources and power for themselves. Each game has its own story, with some elements that tie the two together, but full connection is only set to be explored in future titles. There is an extensive prologue that details the world of Aiden and how its ancient Egyptian world progresses through the story of Joshua. However, this ends up doing Elohim Eternal 2 Son of Man a disservice by providing interesting character, plot points, and twists that cannot be replicated or built upon here. While this sequel follows closely to its inspiration and provides few nuances of its own. The world of Kinoma is reeling from a societal upheaval known as the Time of Tribulation. During this time, a sect of Cimmerian zealots use guerrilla warfare to claim some power from the Pleromans who have long subjugated to Sherimans. This ends poorly for the Sherimans, with many of them killed as Plenomen raised their city of Bethlehem for their defiance. Under the yoke of Pleromans leaders Caiaphas, Herod, Pilates, and Nicodemus, the Cimmerian people have been living in fear for over a decade. Not helping their situation is that the Cimmerians who lose control of their emotion can transform into monsters called Archons. Fear of this is used by the Pleroman elite to rally their citizens into ostracizing of the Sherimans. Players follow the headstrong young Judas, a helpless dreamer who believes joining the Zealots is a way to quickly topple the Pleroman government. After overcoming many frustrations, witnessing the death of his childhood friend Lena's parents, losing his mother Mary and his father Joseph's subservience to the Pleromans, it is easy to see Judas as a willing anarchist. Judas is protective of his younger brother Joshua until he comes of age in the slum of Nazareth, the only remaining Cimmerian city. He continues to lash out more at the Pleromans, much to the chagrin of Joshua, who want to keep things peaceful, while keeping in touch with their friend Lena. When the trio citizens abducted, including an acquaintance of theirs, they can't stay idle anymore. While trying to rescue the abducted citizens, Joshua almost dies, with the experience awakening mysterious power within him. These powers see him being heralded as a messiah, leading the budding rebellion to soon gain traction. There are some positives to be found in the setting, and with some of the technological terminologies, the cyberpunk dystopian landscape helped to distinguish the game from its root and a biblical story, while the presence of a mecha known as Azers, as well as the populace able to transform into monstrous archon, is interesting. To a native Kenoman, all of this is routine, but to players there is little in the way of explanation or backstory that allows these interesting additions to be anything else more than set dressing for an ultimately routine story. The characters of Elohim, Eternal Two Son of Man, feel as though they are on a conveyor belt, leading through the straightforward and familiar path laid out before them. The necessity embellishment to make its story fully work are not presented here. While there is a lot of focus on the story, combat is basic. The system in place serves its purpose, but is ultimately an afterthought. This is because there is an option to swap to story mode anytime, from the start of the game or using the eponymous item at any point to permanently make combat non-existent for the rest of the playthrough. There aren't many encounters, only one in each room, within dungeons that are very short in length. Exploration is simple, with side paths that just contain loot and encounters, giving players very little to be concerned about. Despite how optional it can be, combat is pretty enjoyable, and it's a certain sense of nostalgia, with the screen showing the filling up of action bar and draining enemy health bars. Each battle gives the player a new enemy to face off again and a new set of weaknesses to uncover. With enemies sporting intriguing design, hitting a weakness adds a secondary attack that can do extra damage depending on how well player can time a button press. Enemies can be a challenge if players haven't searched for equipment upgrades, but in addition to using a scanner item, players can use a scan spell to immediately learn the enemy's weaknesses. There are mecha fights with hazard, including an optional area, but these are more straightforward than regular combat, with minimal equipment to swap between and no level up system for the hazard. All wounds and spend Aether points are healed automatically after every win. When enemies see a player, they move so fast that it is nearly impossible to avoid them, though it's worth engaging in all the encounters just to see the enemy design. Each character equips melee weapon, 2 ranged weapon, and heavy weapon provide 1 skill each, meaning that all party members other than Joshua, who has 2 additional Messiah ability, will only have 4 skills to use for their combat action, alongside consumable item and guarding. Even with its simple menu, the UI still becomes cluttered with player menus, sometimes overlapping with the enemy weaknesses displayed on screen, as well as areas that use background particle effect can also tank the frame rate to make the time hit impossible. The music in Elohim, Eternal Two Son of Man feature a small selection of tracks that are used for each situation, such as during combat, boss fights, or exploring the desert. The boss theme stands out as a lot of fun, combining ethereal sync sound with piano in a way that hypes the player up. In contrast, the desert theme is just the sound of a whooshing air that alternate between loud and louder, as if flicking a vacuum on and off that easily grate on the nerves. Visual presentation is also a mixed bag. The enemy design has a lot of detail, and the party portraits feature a pastel shading that makes them stand out. Dungeon and background though come from a cut and paste boxy square shape with only cookie cutter representation of the occasional obstacle to mix things up. Elohim, Eternal 2 Son of Man has some good elements, but it is constantly at odds with itself. The combat tries to make the most of what it has and can be climatic, but is entirely optional. The story is too often telegraphed and cookie cutter, with any interesting use of its setting and building connection to the first game coming far too late to be of any worth. Elohim, Eternal 2 Son of Man is unfortunately left bereft of any engaging spark, and while perhaps future title will provide some payoff, it is stuck in a dull routine that it never quite escaped. RPGamer gave Elohim Eternal 2 Son of a Man 2.5 out of 5. For more detail, hit up the link in the description below. For more video content, subscribe to the channel. Follow us on Twitch for daily stream of your favorite RPGs. Join on the discussion at rpgamer.com on Discord. And for the latest in the RPG news, head over to rpgamer.com.